Hello, my name is Brian. I'm a writer with over 25 books published on Amazon. They're available in Kindle format and also in paperback. If you caught my last video, you'll know that my latest release is called Brother Phillip. It's a modern day Gothic horror story about a young priest who encounters a demon. I'm not going to give it all away at once because I'm going to read it to you one chapter at a time. This video is for Chapter 2, St. John's Chapel. I'll leave a link below to the book on Amazon so you can find it and download it yourself. Please do so and leave a rating and a review afterward. Chapter 2, St. John's Chapel. Philip spent the night in his car. He opened his eyes the next morning and groaned. He felt awful. His back hurt, his neck hurt, and he was stiff and cold. He was starving, too. He had not eaten since he left Toronto the day before. He sat up in the back seat and scowled at the car windows. They were steamed up and he could not see out at all. He smacked his lips together and frowned at the sour taste in his mouth. He fished in his bag and pulled out his toothbrush and toothpaste. He held up the brush and grimaced. He did not have any water to rinse it with, nor did he have any water to drink. He climbed out of his car and stared blearily around the parking lot. The sun had just risen and business in the diner seemed to be hopping. The lot was full of pickup trucks and semis, some of them with trailers and some without. He scowled and looked down at himself. He decided that he looked presentable enough for any crowd of country bumpkins in this area. He ducked down behind his car and shoved his toothbrush into his mouth. Even with no water, it felt better to have fresh breath. He spat into the dirt beside his car and stood again. He smacked his lips together and yawned. Then he went to the front door of the diner. When he opened it, the conversation in the room, which had been loud and raucous a minute before, stopped. The sudden silence was eerie, and every eye in the place focused on him. He swallowed nervously and made his way to the counter. As he got closer, a few voices started muttering quietly behind him. He set his eyes on the middle-aged waitress by the cash register. She was staring at him too, and her expression was anything but welcoming. He noticed that all the patrons in the place spoke with that same odd accent, Irish mixed with something else. Everyone here seemed to have it. He heard someone mutter, "Fag," behind him, followed by a muted burst of laughter. He resisted the urge to turn around. He sat on a stool at the counter and smiled. "Can I get some coffee, please?" he said to the server. She sucked on her lip and looked him over up and down. She chewed on some gum and turned away. She put a mug in front of him and filled it from a coffee pot. "Anything else?" she grumbled. "Toast?" She sniffed and rolled her eyes. "Right." She strolled lazily to the pass-through and spoke quietly to the man in the kitchen. He was unshaven with a partial beard and rolling a cigar between his lips. He gave a brisk nod and disappeared from Philip's view. The conversation in the room slowly began to start again. Soon it was almost as loud as it had been before he came in. He looked around and then focused on the counter in front of him. A small plate with toast arrived, and then the waitress shoved a receipt under one corner of it. He did not look up. He sipped at his coffee and took a bite of toast. And then he realized how hungry he really was. Toast and coffee was not going to make a dent in his appetite this morning. Miss, he said and met her eyes. Can I get eggs and bacon too? Now you want to eat? She asked irritably. She rolled her eyes again and went to the pass-through once more. She wrote on a bill and handed it to the cook. He looked it over and then disappeared from view again. Philip finished his toast and coffee and waited impatiently for the rest of his food. The server sauntered over to him and poured more coffee for him. He nodded his thanks and she sighed with boredom. When his eggs and bacon arrived, he ate it all down. He walked out of the diner and tried to ignore the snickering and name-calling from behind. He took a deep breath and walked to his car. He opened his phone and saw that there was still no service. He rolled his eyes and looked around again. There were no cars on the road and no one in sight, and he still did not know how to get to where he was going. He sighed heavily and started walking back to the cafe. Halfway there, he looked at the gas station. Hallelujah! There was someone inside. He put a fresh smile on his face and went to the door. Help ya? An old man said lazily from behind a dirty counter. Hi, I'm looking for St. John's Chapel. The man cocked his eyebrow and looked him over. What you want to go there for? Like everyone else, he spoke with that same accent. It seemed to be a common thing in this area. I'm Father Jacob's new assistant pastor. The man frowned and looked him over from head to toe. You're a priest? Not yet. I'm a student priest. He grunted and looked him up and down again. You don't look like no priest to me, student or no. They assigned me to this area. I'm supposed to be there by 9 o'clock. The attendant shook his head and sputtered loudly. You sleep in your car, boyo? Yeah, I did. I didn't have any choice. The stranger shook his head again. You say you're going to meet Father Jacob? Yeah. Don't go like that, boyo. He'll grab you by the ear and hose you down in the garden. Like what? You're a mess. You slept in your car and you look it. Your hair's unkempt and your clothes look like you nipped them from a hobo. I can change my clothes. I have a change in the car. Then do it right quick, boyo, and comb your bloody hair. And try not to look like you slept in your car. Father Jacob is not one to forgive disrespect. Trust me, I attended chapel school there when I was young. He had no patience for anyone looking like you do. Okay, Philip said in shock. What you waiting for, boyo? Get yourself cleaned up. Philip looked around in confusion. Here, the man said. He tossed him a key tied on a string to a large plastic fob. Bathrooms along the side. Get washed and changed. When you're ready, you travel north on that road out front. Go 3 miles and turn left. Which way is north? God's bones, son. Don't you know the points of the compass? No, Philip mumbled. The man rolled his eyes and pointed. Turn right, you daft bastard. Philip blushed and nodded. How many kilometers is 3 miles? You really are a wide-eyed child, aren't you? Philip rushed out of the gas station and got a change of clothes from his car. Then he scurried to the bathroom. He returned the key to the attendant and then went to his car. He still had 20 minutes before it was 9 o'clock. Philip saw a sign on the highway up the road that said St. John's Cemetery. He slowed down to almost nothing and bit his lip in thought. He decided to assume that St. John's Cemetery should be attached to St. John's Chapel. It was all he had to go on. He took the turn on a chance and found a small church nestled in the thick forest. The building was very old and much overgrown. Vines and other leafy plants clung to the outer walls, and the grounds were mostly full of weeds and tall grass. As he suspected, the cemetery was indeed attached to the church. He could see the lines of crosses and tombstones in the distance. The graveyard was overgrown as well. Looks like something you see in a horror movie. He went to the front entrance, the only part of the church that was not covered with vegetation. From close up, he saw that this part of the chapel at least was well kept and maintained. He swallowed nervously and placed his hand on the ornate door handle. The large door, it was at least 8 feet tall, was thrust open, and he was forced to take a step back. An old man with bushy eyebrows and a scowl on his face poked his head through the crack in the door. "Who are you?" he demanded irritably. He stammered. "I'm Brother Phillip. The seminary school sent me to be your assistant pastor." Father Jacob frowned and took a deep breath. He looked the young man over and smacked his lips as if he were tasting something unpleasant. "I suppose you'd better come in then," he growled. Father Jacob's accent was pure Irish. The man turned and walked away. Philip opened the door a little farther and stepped inside. He looked around and saw that the foyer, unlike the exterior of the building, was well kept and the floor polished. He caught sight of a shadow at the end of a corridor turning out of sight. He rushed to follow the old man and found him in a small kitchen. He was sitting at a table and sipping coffee. "What are you supposed to do here anyway? Do you at least know the liturgy?" "Yes, Father." "I'm not expecting much from you, boyo. If you can stand still without shifting with ants in your pants, I guess that'll have to do. I hope you brought your own cassock. I don't have any you could wear." I did, Father." "Good. At least one thing I can count on you for. Maybe you can do the yard work. That's something that's been left too long." The old priest waved a dismissive hand, and Philip walked away in a state of shock.